Let's talk about emotional intelligence. Specifically, let's talk about self-regulation today. I'm actually moderating a leadership development forum where about 12 of us as leaders are getting together and we're talking about emotional intelligence and we're talking about self-regulation. And there were some really nice observations that came out of it that I want to share with you. Whether they're pressing on your insecurities or emotionally hurting you, or even just setting off a trigger from your past, you're going to want to respond in one of three ways. And the way you choose to respond says so much about your character. The first response is retaliation. You want revenge, you want to get that person to hurt. And honestly, that response is the ugliest response and will always be the worst choice. But it will be the choice that people take more often. You can recognize that it's coming and figure out what that trigger is. You're going to be far better off in the future. So that first response of retaliation, you want to take a moment and really figure out if that's worth it. The next two responses are going to be whether or not you actually care about the sources of the trigger. The first one is if you care about the person. If you care about the person, you're going to build a bridge and you're actually going to try to mend the fence, understand their perspective, see where they're coming from, and see if you can find a common ground. I think that is a really noble response. But you're only going to take the time to do that if you really care about the source. And that will only work if the source that actually triggered you can have some accountability as to what they did to trigger you or to trigger the situation. It's a crapshoot, but your response is absolutely the higher ground in trying to make it work. And you make it work until you realize it can't work for reasons of probably the other person's character, integrity, or some other factor. Third response is probably in a situation where you don't really care about this other person and you don't really need to mend that relationship. There's not a lot of energy or time that's worth expending on that particular situation. So you leave it be. Make sure that any noise that situation has created is settled in your life and you move on. That's the classiest response. That's what I like to call the queen energy response. Because you don't have to participate in the retaliation. You don't have to mend the fence if you know that that's just not a bridge that you need or want to build in your life that's going to result in positive interactions. So you take the queen road. No noise, just class. This is relevant in the workplace. This is relevant in your friendships. This is relevant here on social media where there's so much controversy. It's relevant across your entire life. And these are lessons that if you can recognize those triggers and you can say, okay, that person just hurt me, or I'm stressed out and this situation is triggering me. This is coming from a trigger in my past, and I really need to get this in check before I choose one of these responses. If you can identify a trigger and then actually choose a response, you will absolutely hold yourself with a poise that will rise above any of the controversy. It's been such a great lesson for our leaders, and so many of them came up to me and says, I've never really thought to really take a moment and really separate the trigger and the response. And so I thought I would share it with you. I hope it's helpful. Talk to you soon.